I understand you.
Okay, just a second. Got one resisting. Get on the ground! Drop the gun!
On March 21st, 2025, two local officers from the St. Louis County Police Department attempted to arrest a local doctor at his home for the alleged crime of harassment in the first degree. The man, a former physician, during the encounter, it was learned he had a handgun, which led to an altercation with the police. The officers unloaded their weapons onto this man, and at the end of it all, he lost his life. The key problems with this case: the cops showed up, never identified that they had a warrant, and they forced their way into this man's house. Is this a viable lawsuit? Was this man's constitutional rights violated? I have my answers, but let's go through it together. And I encourage you to share your opinion, your commentary with the community below, and tell me what you think. Is this a lawsuit? Did the cops handle themselves properly? So now let's watch the video. The body camera starts with them walking up to the front door of Dr. Lannis's home, and they approach to the front door and they knock. This is a regular residential neighborhood. It's not an apartment or a townhome or anything like that. This man owns his own standalone home, and the officers walk up and they perform a knock and talk. Now, I want you to notice, as they walk up to this front door, there's no urgency at all. There's no drawn weapons. There's no emergency or anything at all. This is just a very casual walk up to the front door and knock conversation. Now, Missouri law does allow warrantless arrests in public places for particularly felony offenses like this. But the problem is that this man, Dr. Lannis, is in his home. And when you are inside your home under the law, that changes everything. You have the highest level of protection under the Fourth Amendment in your home because our Constitution says that your home is your castle. Now, I want you to notice as the officers approach and knock on that front door, no one is in danger. They casually knock on the door. They wait about 10 seconds for Dr. Lannis to actually arrive, and they just identified themselves as the St. Louis County Police. I want you to also notice how Dr. Lannis appears here. He's tall, but he's not aggressive. He's not wearing a weapon. He has no weapon on him whatsoever. He's posing no threat at all.
Yes, hello?
Hey, Dr. Lannis.
Hi, come on over.
Hi.
How are you guys?
Hey, good. You mind stepping out for us for just a minute? I'll explain to you everything that's going on.
Okay, I have to stop right here because there's several things I noticed right out of the gate. We are looking now at a single family home. Cops walk right up to the front door, and I want you to notice what they didn't do. They did not announce whatsoever during any of this entire encounter that they ever had a warrant at all. They never said that at all. Because they did not announce that they had a warrant, not mention at one time, and they just knocked on the front door. This is what we call an old-fashioned knock and talk under the law. Now, when you look at the context of what the officers are doing here, you have to understand that they're walking up to this guy's front door, but it's a quiet morning in Fenton, Missouri. And in fact, when I was looking at the statute, it is a first-degree harassment, Class E felony in Missouri. But I want you to understand this is not a serious, it's not murder. It's not some really serious crime having to do with some type of aggression. And he has no prior history of being some type of convicted felon. In fact, the reports mention something about that it stemmed from some type of tampering with a vehicle or something like that. I don't have all the specifics of everything that happened here. It may have involved an ex-wife or something along those lines, but the details are fuzzy. Most important here, he was not posing an immediate threat in any way whatsoever, either to these officers during this time, and the officers never announced they had a warrant. Either way, this man should have never lost his life in this altercation. Now, I want you to notice here this portion of the video where these two St. Louis County officers show up at the front door. One of them was a rookie, and as far as I can tell, the other one had about 8 years on the job. And of course, they knock on this front door. And I have to be real clear about this. This is so critical. I say this over and over again on all of my videos. Look, if a cop walks up to your front door and he's doing nothing more than a knock and talk, and he doesn't announce that he has a warrant, you can absolutely ignore everything that's going on outside. You have no duty to answer your front door. It doesn't matter what the officers are saying on the other side. You can completely ignore them under the law. In fact, my general advice on this situation, it doesn't matter what the cops are saying on the other side, unless they identify and declare and show you that they have a warrant, don't believe them and keep the door closed. The number one mistake Dr. Linus made here in this situation that cost him his life is that he answered the front door. The moment he answered the front door, what's the first thing the cops tried to pressure him to do? They tried to pressure him to step outside. And you might look at that and say, why is that so important? Well, if they had a warrant, what would they have done? They don't need any reason for him to step outside. They could just grab him right then and there and arrest him because they had a warrant for his arrest. But because they didn't identify that they had a warrant whatsoever, and as far as I can tell that was not the case, They wanted him to step outside of the home because at that moment he loses certain protections. If he is standing within the threshold of his doorway of his home, staying inside the protection of his home, the cops can't just reach in there and do whatever they want. Now, folks, listen, in Missouri, just like all over the rest of the country, police need a valid warrant in order to arrest you in your home. And this was covered under Payton versus New York, a Supreme Court case that was decided, I think, back in 1980, a good long while ago, that says police must have a valid warrant in order to arrest you in your home. Now, there are only 3 exceptions to that warrant requirement. If cops can prove that, number one, you gave consent, then they can do whatever they want. They can walk right into your home and you can be arrested. If they can prove that there is exigent circumstances, okay, what does that mean? That means some emergency situation, like an immediate danger that's posing, like evidence being destroyed or the hot pursuit of a fleeing felon or something like that. That would be one of the only other times that they would be able to do that here. And none of that existed in this situation. Everything is low key. There's not any sort of pressure that's taking place or any type of situation that would have warranted that here. Now, back to this knock and talk here. Cops can show up to your front door like they did the doctor here. And they can do this as long as they don't overstay their welcome. And they can't turn this into a search where they start looking around your home. And this was actually determined in the Supreme Court case of Florida versus Jardines. This case is really important because what it established is that if you are within the protected curtilage of your home, you essentially have the same protections as your home itself. So in this situation, we see the doctor standing within, he's still inside of his home, certainly within the threshold of his home. And so if cops just walk up and they don't have a valid warrant, this is really important to understand. They can't just start body snatching people. They can't just walk up and arrest people and just pick people off. I mean, otherwise, if they could do this, why would you ever need a search warrant, or an arrest warrant to begin with? You just walk up and wait for people to be anywhere on any of the curtilage. You don't need an arrest warrant anymore. No. Florida versus Jardine said if you're within your home or within the protected curtilage of your home, cops have got to have a valid warrant. So now we see Lannis opens the door and immediately they get aggressive with him. And this is when it hits the fan. They then basically tell him, Dr. Lannis, that he is under arrest and they demand that he step outside. They basically gave him an order. Let's watch.
And I'll be honest with you. I know you got a lot going on in
Yeah.
your personal life and everything like that.
Yeah.
And we talked on the phone, I guess, maybe a couple weeks
yeah.
ago or something
Yeah.
like that. It was actually you and Officer here. So maybe you do, maybe you don't. At the end of the day, we've got some stuff we got to take care of.
Okay.
I want to give you a courtesy as long as you give us a courtesy, okay?
Sure.
At this point, though, we do have enough. If you mind stepping out for us really quick, okay?
I want to stop right here and notice what's going on here. Dr. Lannis should not be doing or talking about anything right now. He legally has a right to turn around, shut the door on the officers right now. They've never identified that they had a warrant whatsoever. He could absolutely abandon the entire situation and go back into his home. And we now know the cops can't just barrel into his house. Why? Because he's not in hot pursuit. They didn't chase him into his house. There's no evidence that he's destroying any evidence. There's no anything here that indicates that whatsoever. And so there's no exigent circumstance that would warrant what's happening. And that's why it's so shocking when we see what the cops continue to do. And I want you to understand here, unfortunately, Dr. Lannis doesn't just turn around and shut the door behind him, which he had a legal right to do. And so this is why I want you to understand no good deed goes unpunished. If an officer comes to your front door and starts pressing you harder and harder, unless you remove yourself legally from the situation, they're going to press harder and escalate and elevate the tension.
Oh, okay. Just a second.
No, well, we need you to step out now.
Just a second, sir. Yeah, just a second.
Go ahead and step on out for us.
Yeah, I will.
Okay.
Can I take a minute?
Well, we need you to step out now. Here, step on out to the front porch, okay? Because you are, at this time, are being placed under arrest.
Okay, here's the $1 million question here. Could Dr. Lannis look at them, avoid answering them anymore, turn around and shut the door and lock it? Could he have done that here? Absolutely, based on what we see. Now, here's where we get into the legal nuance, because I know some cops and police officers will argue here that he had lost some of his protections because he was standing within the threshold of his home and not necessarily all the way inside of his home. This brings me to the U.S. Supreme Court case of U.S. versus Santana. And this case is really important because the Supreme Court has labeled the threshold of your front door as kind of what identifies where you are at within that threshold, determines if you are inside your home or outside your home. You want to think of that threshold as like the protective force field of the law that puts limitations on the police, especially when they don't have a warrant. So what did the court say the threshold is? It's really nothing more than your door frame. And so if someone is standing within the door frame? Are they considered inside or outside of their home? Well, the court in Santana seemed to focus on that if you are outside of the threshold of your door frame, right? So if you are leaning outside of your door frame, then you are no longer considered inside of your home. So we're looking to see, is his body inside the home, or is it passed through that threshold to the other side? If that was the case, then he is technically no longer inside his home. And I'm guessing here the officers might try to claim that he had consented if they think that he impliedly consented by leaning in and if he crossed over that threshold. But you tell me, you can look at this section again. Do you ever see him cross over the threshold past the door frame into where the officers are? And this is the part we have to look at this, because I can guarantee the officers are going to try to claim that at that point, if he crossed over that threshold and then tried to go back, they could claim that it was either hot pursuit or some type of exigent circumstance that would allow them to do and justify what they're going to do here in a few minutes. So what do you think? Was he in the door frame? I know we just took a look at it again. Now, I looked at it and I checked it out several times, and for as far as I can tell, he never stepped outside of that door frame. He is still within the full protection of the inside of his home. He never crossed that threshold in any way, and I believe he's protected. Now, the skeptical side of me says that the officers are continuing to try to test his boundaries and even starting to reach in his direction to see if they can provoke him to walk closer to the threshold. And if he does make it through the frame of that door, they can obviously try to use that as probable cause. Let's see what happens next.
Because you are, at this time, are being placed under arrest. Okay.
Really?
I'll walk you through everything.
Let me be clear for just a second. There is nothing magical just because a cop says you are under arrest. Nothing magical happens now. If you are inside of your home and cops show up at your front door and you remain within the protection of your home and they don't have a warrant and the cops say, hey, you need to step outside right now because you're under arrest, nothing magic happens. It doesn't mean you have to comply with anything that they're saying. Unless they have your consent, which you better not give them, unless they have some sort of exigent circumstance that's going on here, and there's certainly no fleeing felon, there's no destruction of evidence, the cops can't do anything. It doesn't matter what they say here. If they don't have a valid warrant, they have no real power. Now, the number one question I get about this situation that we're just watching right now with Dr. Lannis is people say, Jeff, hold on a second. I was just given an order from a cop that I have to step outside of my home. Don't I have to comply with that order? The answer is yes, but only if that order was lawful. 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 In other words, the officer has to be able to back up his command with something that's supported by law. That's the only way you have to listen to him. All of us must only comply to an officer's request while we remain within the protection of our home. And remember the context here. So if we're within the protection of our home, I only have to comply to an officer's request if it's a lawful order. What is a lawful order? I heard a judge say one time, and I wrote it down. The judge said a lawful order is something you can back up, something you can enforce with the penalty of law. So if a cop shows up at your front door, like they did Dr. Lannis here, and says, hey, we're going to arrest you now, and I've got probable cause to go ahead and arrest you. I'm going to need you to step outside of your house. If they don't have exigent circumstances, if there's no destruction of evidence, if there's no consent, do they really have a lawful order here? Absolutely not. There is no lawful order in my opinion, and Dr. Lannis could have literally ignored that order, and he didn't have to debate it and sit there and wonder, should I step out or not step out? He had every right to shut that door. If what the cops did here with Dr. Lannis was a lawful order, they show up, there's no actual mention of a warrant whatsoever, and they just tell the guy, hey, we've got enough here to arrest you. You need to step outside of your home. Why would a cop ever need a warrant at all? No, there's no reason for an arrest warrant. They could just follow this process every time, and you could throw arrest warrants out the door. This was not, in my opinion, a lawful order. So let's continue watching, and you're going to notice Dr. Lannis starts to get a little cold feet. He's thinking about trying to walk away from this situation, and let's see what happens.
I'll walk you through everything. Okay.
Oh, God.
And everything like that. I don't want to cause a scene here at your residence. Okay.
Yeah, I understand.
Okay. Everyone's got cameras.
Yeah.
And people, we don't want that. Okay. So just step out for us. We'll walk you to the car.
Okay. Wow. Give me just a second. Holy shit.
Okay.
Wow.
Well,
We'll explain the process to you and everything. And we're not, we're going to take you to the station. We're not going to take you down to the jail. I mean, we'll see, but...
Okay, I want to stop right there, and I want you to notice what that second officer said just now in that process, and I wrote this down. He said, hey, we'll walk you through the process, and we don't want to take you down to the jail or anything. I mean, we'll see. This officer right now is lying to Dr. Linus, right? He's lying to him. And I've covered this so many times on this channel, but this is a perfect example of a police officer showing up, the second officer, and I'm sure he misspoke, whatever that means, but he lied to him and said, no, we're not going to take you down to the office or down to the station right now. But he clearly lied to them. And so the Supreme Court has said that a police officer can absolutely lie to you. And as long as they're not doing so in a way that causes coercion or places you under duress, it's legal to do so. Another classic example of that happening here with this doctor. And yet that's another reason to never open your door during an investigation. When the cops show up like this, you have no responsibility to open your door.
Well,
We have to do this. There's no really avoiding it. We have to.
yeah, we know you got a lot going on. We're not trying to put any more work or anything like that on you. Okay, but
It's best we just get it out of the way now, though, and then you can handle what you need to handle. But our hands are pretty tied. We have to.
But let's get this over with so it's not looming anymore. Okay.
Yeah, sure. Just give me just a second.
Okay.
What's this? Is this about the other day at the park? Is this what's going on?
Well, we'll be happy to talk to you, but we gotta do some stuff. So go ahead and step on out for us, okay?
Okay.
I understand you.
Okay. Just a second.
Okay, let's stop right here, and I want you to look and see what the cop did here. I believe this is what the central issue is going to be around this entire case. Look at the rookie cop. He grabs the doctor's arm, and he would not let him go, tried to pull him outside the home when he's clearly inside of his home. And they did not ever identify that they had an arrest warrant. Now, the first question that many of you may be thinking, is this force? Is this force by the police officer against the doctor? Now, Missouri courts, they follow the federal precedent, and federal courts have said that even minor intrusions into your home without a valid warrant, those can be Fourth Amendment violations and considered a use of force. So a big red flag to me as just good police practice. There is no exigent circumstances here. This guy wasn't making any threats. He was being calm. Why wouldn't these cops just stop what they're doing, back off, get a warrant, and then come back in order to take care of this situation? Because if they had a warrant, they didn't need him to step outside. They could just arrest him right there on the spot. So to me, this is some lazy police work. They should have stopped and thought about what they were doing. This is where things get rough. The struggle now spills inside the foyer, and you're going to see here over this period of time as we watch this video here, where this struggle, it gets really serious and deadly.
Okay.
I understand you.
Okay. Just a second.
Got one resisting. Get on the ground. Drop the gun. Drop the gun.
I want you to notice the camera is shaking. You can see the interior of the living room here, the furniture. And during this entire situation, Lannis is yelling to get off. And it's hard to tell exactly what's going on here, but the officers keep yelling, stop resisting, you're under arrest. And we can argue over what happens inside the home here, but I want you to just notice the rest of this. That one move towards the officer's, or the officer towards Dr. Lannis's arm, is what led to this entire situation. Now, many of you are saying, Jeff, I don't understand how the cops are going to substantiate how they got inside. And I'm going to walk you through what I think they're going to claim here that gave them the legal authority to do this. I think legally, the cops are going to claim that once the resistance started at the front door, they're going to say he resisted his arrest. That allowed them to maintain hot pursuit inside of his home in order to subdue the doctor. But let me ask you a question. Did it look to you like Dr. Lannis was actually fleeing here? I mean, you can watch it again and see here, but does it look like he was fleeing? Now, to me, no. He obviously wasn't trying to run out the front door. There was no evidence that he was in quick hot pursuit leaving out of the building or out of the back door either. And in fact, he just slowly pulled back, and it looked to me like he might be trying to shut the front door. In my opinion, I believe the officers manufactured exigent circumstances. They thought because they reached in and grabbed him, all of a sudden things got out of control and they took it to the next level. This is precisely what Florida versus Jardines covered. The Supreme Court warned officers just like this in this situation. They told them, you cannot use knock and talks where you walk up to someone's front door as a Trojan horse to get inside their house. It will be interesting to see how the judges rule on this, how this whole process moves forward, because I believe a good defense attorney here, good counsel could argue that it was an unlawful touching here, was an unlawful use of force by the officer to violate his constitutional rights by reaching in when he had not overcome through that threshold of the door, by reaching in and grabbing him here. So when we listen to the rest of this is where it really gets full of tension here. You hear the officers yelling to drop the gun. If Dr. Lannis did display a weapon here, which we know when we found out later he did have one, the cops are going to use Graham versus Connor, the Supreme Court case, to establish that they had a justifiable right here to use force in order to protect themselves and to actually subdue him. But here's the question I have. Sitting from where I'm at right now, looking at this, did the police officer's unlawful entry, is that what provoked what just happened here? What we saw him being thrown to the ground and there being a weapon? Did it provoke it? To me, it looked kind of like the cops created the close quarter fighting here by entering into the house itself, which then created these close quarters where all the tension went crazy. Now, I want you to look at it and tell me what you think about this. I want to know your opinion on this, but none of this started because the doctor wanted to initiate the contact or the tension. This started because the officer grabbed him and then it just kind of went in a momentum down to the ground inside the foyer. Now I'll let you watch the rest of this video down in the link in the description that I provided for this video. And I didn't want any of this to be sanctioned by YouTube on any of this so that you couldn't watch this portion, but I want you to go back and take a look at it yourself, because the crazy thing about this, Dr. Lannis, no shots fired. The officers unloaded 13 shots on Dr. Lannis, which cost him his life. This whole situation did not have to go down this way. It could have gone very differently. In my opinion, the police treated this completely the wrong way. We can sit here and debate whether what happened inside of his home was proper in terms of how all that took place. But it's my opinion that everything that happened outside of the home was based upon police ignorance of the law. And that police ignorance of the law is what the direct cause was that cost this doctor his life inside of his home over something that should have never gone down like this. So when you see a tragedy like this brings you to the question of qualified immunity. Could there be a lawsuit here? Now I want to give you the quick 2 steps to determine if there's qualified immunity when you're going to bring a Section 1983 lawsuit. Number 1, was there a violation of constitutional rights against Dr. Lannis with the police? And then number 2, would a reasonable police officer know their actions violated established legal precedent? Now it seems pretty clear to me that these officers violated Dr. Lannis's constitutional rights. They grabbed his arm. They never mentioned they had a warrant whatsoever. They never produced a warrant or even mentioned anything about a warrant during this entire period of time. They had no exigent circumstances, no consent, and they assaulted, they grabbed Dr. Lannis, and it was the proximate cause of all this taking place. And we know that the home is the most protected place in all of the world under the Fourth Amendment when we talk about our Fourth Amendment rights. But then that brings us to the second and usually the most litigated part of qualified immunity. And here it is on the screen again. Would a reasonable officer know, and I put this in all caps here for a reason, know their actions violated clearly established legal precedent? Now, to me, this is as simple as it gets. Cops are supposed to be trained on this day one when they walk into the police academy, that your home is your castle, it is the most protected place under the Fourth Amendment, and simply put, you are not allowed to walk up to someone's front door, violate their privacy rights within their own home without some sort of consequences. They should know this is a very well established legal precedent. And in fact, there is case law out there that I have quoted on this channel that have talked about where there is no qualified immunity for some police officers' actions for similar circumstances like this. The problem? Courts give wide discretion and leeway to police officers in this situation over and over again. So it's a little early on this. We'll have to give an update and wait and see what actually happens. So what can we learn from all of this? The most important thing is that this should never happen to anyone watching this video again, because you now know your rights. And I feel terrible for the doctor here. He may have made some bad mistakes or some things that should have gone differently on his end. But what's most important is if he had known his rights, never answer the front door unless you know that that officer behind that door has an actual valid warrant. You have no duty whatsoever to ever answer the door when the police come to your front door. And we just saw a classic example of how it can cost you dearly, sometimes your life, if you open that door. So what do you say if you really want to respond to the officers on the other side? Well, number one, let me make sure you keep your door closed the entire time. You can talk through the door and you don't want to open it at all because the officers may just find a way to get their way inside like they did here. And you want to tell the officer, "Officer, I do not consent to the entry into my home or a search of my home, and I will not let you in and will not answer any questions unless you can prove to me that you have a valid warrant." If the officer says he doesn't have a warrant or he doesn't answer you, you can demand that they leave your property. Of course, this sort of goes without saying here, but record everything. Your doorbell camera, record it with your phone, even if it's through a window. Do everything you can to make sure you're able to not just have the officer's word against your word, you have objective evidence to establish you were in the right. Second, if the cops go just off the rails here like they did in this situation, Dr. Lannis, I think, panicked. I don't know if this was an intentional move on his part. Maybe it was a divorce situation that was going sideways. But him having the gun is what cost him his life at the end of the day. Now, he might have been beat up pretty badly. It could have still been a very serious Fourth Amendment violation and a civil rights claim here potentially. But the moment he had a weapon and he did anything that appeared to be resistance, it turned into a life or death situation. So even when cops are in the wrong in this situation, please be careful. Do not resist, because it could cost you everything. And finally, if a cop claims they do have a warrant, don't ever believe that they actually do unless they show it to you. You can say, let me see a copy of that warrant. You want to confirm that there is an actual warrant, and you record the entire situation. That way you know what your actual rights are before you ever step outside of your home. The Lannis shooting is a tragic reminder that one bad decision by a police officer can lead to the loss of everything. The police officers, who knows, they may be exonerated. They may be no-billed by a grand jury. But the doctor, his life is gone forever. Learn from this. It's your home and it's your rights. Guard them fiercely. Speaking of your rights, what if you refuse smartly to answer the door in a situation like this, and now the cops get frustrated with you and they want to either cover or disable your security camera? What can you do here? How can you stop cops from doing this? Check out this next video where I break down how to stop cops from covering your porch camera. We'll cover it all. See you over there.